you for your comments in the chat as well. So thank you, Emily, for starting the recording. I love that everyone's introducing themselves. We do have kind of a large group. So I think what we'll do is, because it's a large group, we won't necessarily go around and introduce ourselves on this right now, but maybe when we get to the Q&A, if someone maybe when we get to the Q&A, if someone, if you want to ask a question and then introduce yourself when you ask your question, that would be a good thing. Okay, I'm seeing that some people can hear me and other people cannot.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So it seems like most people can hear me from what I'm seeing in the chat and what people are saying. So might be on your end for those who are having trouble hearing. I wonder if you might either turn off and on or kind of change your audio settings, or maybe exit and come back into the meeting. Or Emily, do you have any wisdom to share? No, okay, yeah. Yes, okay. Thank you for the suggestion, Tanisha. Yeah, so maybe leave and come back in. Or you could try getting into it on your phone, might be another option. So I'm going to keep fingers crossed for those who can't hear, that if you follow the suggestion from Tanisha, hopefully that'll work. So because we have a lot to get through, I'm going to go ahead and start. So again, because my initial welcome was before we started recording, I'm Priya Sarkar, Arts and Culture Officer with the City of Charlotte. We are going to talk about the Opportunity Fund grant cycle that's open now. And I'm going to, did someone have a question? No?
Ira, I had 2 yes from the board that were going to join, and I'm not sure if they're having difficulty. Jane Bergmar and William Sanders.
I think so. I think
Okay.
that after they started meeting, stuff will stop going out.
Hopefully they'll be able to join, and we are going to need to get started since we're about 10 after, and we want to be respectful of your time. So hopefully they'll be able to join, but if not, we are going to have the presentation that they can look at later. And I see that Jane is here, so thank you, Jane, for putting that into the chat. Okay, so Emily, thank you for running the slides today. So the Opportunity Fund is a subset of the Infusion Fund that I mentioned a few minutes ago, which is a 3-year partnership between the City of Charlotte and private donors through the Foundation for the Carolinas. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just briefly, we're going to tell you a little bit about the Infusion Fund, the Opportunity Fund. We're going to go over the eligibility requirements and talk about the process, which includes the letter of intent process, which is the first part. And then we will talk about the second phase of the process, which involves full proposals and a budget. We will walk through the budget template, so we're hoping that will be a helpful part of the session today. We'll talk about how the grants are considered and awarded, and then we will try to leave some time at the end for questions and answers. Next slide, please. So first, you may have seen these guiding principles before. These are guiding principles that were adopted by the Arts and Culture Advisory Board, which is an 18-member board that is appointed by both the public sector, meaning mayor and council, as well as so half the board is appointed by mayor and council, and half the board is appointed by the Foundation for the Carolinas for the private sector, and one of those appointees is the ASC's appointee. And this 18-member board adopted these guiding principles just over a year ago, actually, when it was a pretty new board. And we use these guiding principles to undergird all the work that we do, which includes any grant allocations, as well as the comprehensive arts and culture plan that hopefully you're aware of, that we have been working on and are continuing to work on through the spring. And hopefully you have had a chance to participate in that, and it's not too late. In fact, at the end of this presentation, I will talk about how you can be involved right now. But meanwhile, wanted to share these guiding principles. I'm not going to read them to you because you can read them for yourselves, but also you may have seen these too when if you've had a chance to go into the letter of intent form, because we do ask that you share with us how your proposed project for the Opportunity Fund grant aligns with these guiding principles. In the past, and I'll talk a little bit about the Opportunity Fund and what we've done with that so far, but truly every project that has been considered by the advisory board for an Opportunity Fund grant, we look at the guiding principles and look at how the project aligns with these, since this is what we're striving for. Next slide, please. So just a quick snapshot of what the Infusion Fund is and the work that we've been doing. So a few things that we have done in our first couple of years, and actually we're not even fully through the second year of the Infusion Fund. It started in July 2021. And so we are now in the second fiscal year because we go from July to June for the fiscal years of the Infusion Fund. And so we're a little over halfway through the 3 years of the Infusion Fund. It concludes in June 2024. So far in the first little over a year and a half, the Infusion Fund has awarded about $18 million, a little more than that, in unrestricted operating support to 79 organizations and groups. About $2 million to additional dollars to organizations and artists distributed in partnership with the ASC. Another $2 million for ASC's operations, and almost $1 million through this Opportunity Fund for 33 projects that are by artists and groups. We are, we've been hard at work to distribute the funds that are in the Infusion Fund, which I should have mentioned what that is. It's $12 million per year for 3 fiscal years. So next slide. So as I mentioned, the Opportunity Fund is a subset of the Infusion Fund, and really it is a new mechanism that we introduced last year, which was an effort to do several things. One is to really complement the other funding opportunities that already exist in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and offer funding that is, it's also project-based, but it is timely in that it's working to be on a quicker response timeframe than a lot of existing grant cycles. And it is by open call. So again, really aiming to make it open to everyone according to, we do have some basic eligibility guidelines that we're going to get into in a moment, but we wanted to make sure that it's open to all by an open call. Just recognizing that sometimes some of the funding that is available in Charlotte-Mecklenburg is not available by open call. It might be just more relational or kind of just different sources that are not ones that everyone can apply to. So wanted to also have a quick response in a short time frame, because we know that you all as artists and organizations are always creating and producing and doing something that is an artistic activity. And those things don't always align with a cycle, especially a grant cycle that's many, many months long. Sometimes a cycle can be, you know, most of a year. So we were looking for a way to provide funding on a faster turnaround. So we actually piloted this with a couple of projects last spring. The I Am Queen Charlotte project, with which many of you may have participated in or experienced, which was a week of many different types of artistic activities in many different disciplines. And then, I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. And then there was another project, which was a partnership actually of funding with South Arts to provide funding from the Ford Foundation to support an organization that would participate in a training cohort and receive funding that way too. And they actually had a separate selection process, and Jazz Arts Charlotte was selected through their selection process. So those are the first two that we tried this idea out with. And then we actually formalized this funding mechanism in fall and had 3 rounds of it, very quick turnaround, September, October, November, where we considered applications on a rolling basis. And actually a working group of the board reviewed, scored, met and discussed proposals each month, and actually made recommendations to the full board for their vote and approval. And so actually we're able, and in fact, you know, the board had decided to, you know, try it out with about $400,000. And there were just so many projects, so much going on, and just, you know, really great projects that had strong alignment with the guiding principles and the purpose of the Opportunity Fund, that I, you know, have to say I was thrilled that the board decided to go beyond the $400,000 that they were initially planning to try this out with, and actually awarded over $600,000 to 31 projects in 3 months. And so we are also thrilled that after kind of taking a pause and analyzing the initial cycles of the fund and looking to see, you know, what we could learn from that, we moved forward into to do another cycle, which is the one that you are interested in now, which is up to $325,000 available through this current cycle. Next slide, please. So what is it? I covered a little bit of what we're trying to do with the fund, but so I won't, this is a lot of words that really just there for future reference, but really there are a few things we're trying to do. So in addition to infusing more money into the sector to fund timely projects in a quick and responsive fashion, we're also trying to provide money to do things that are kind of testing out different ideas, you know, testing things out, especially things that we're learning through the arts and culture planning process. And so, we're seeing a bunch of some different things, Emily. I think it went away from the presentation. Yeah. Thanks. So things that might be happening that actually relate to the kinds of things that we are hearing from the public, hearing from the community, and finding through the arts and culture planning process that are important things to try or to test potential solutions or needs in the community. And so, and also definitely feel free to take some photos, but we will post this if you want to download it later. And so yeah, we're actually learning a lot already through the things that through the Opportunity Fund process so far, and we'll look forward to continuing to learn things as the projects are completed and we hear back from you all. Next slide. So I am just going to do one quick thing just to let you know about kind of what we received through last falls, which is that we actually had a mix of in the 3 months we had 31 projects funded, and it was a mix of nonprofit organizations and individual artists or groups of or collectives that maybe don't have nonprofit status but have worked with a fiscal sponsor. We'll talk a little bit more of that in a minute about the fiscal agent or fiscal sponsor. But so actually about half the grantees, grant recipients were nonprofit organizations, and a quarter of them were individual artists, and another quarter of them are groups or collectives working with a fiscal sponsor. And there you see that over $600,000 that was awarded last fall. Next slide. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Emily to go through the next few slides.
Hi. So for Opportunity Fund eligibility, it's restricted grants. Recipients can use the money for purposes relating to their proposed project, program, or initiative, and that should be aligned with your budget. The Opportunity Fund supports projects that test ideas from the cultural planning process and inform the plan's development, projects that don't fit neatly within existing grant cycles and structures, that may not require sustained or unrestricted funding, and come up throughout the fiscal year. Some of the types of projects are arts and cultural experiences, organizational and technical support, programming, and collaborations. Here are some examples. I just mentioned the first couple. It also includes renting spaces for project activities, permitting costs, advertising and marketing, research and reporting, personnel and training costs, and membership fees. Who can participate in this program? Nonprofit organizations or artists and creative groups that utilize a nonprofit fiscal agent or fiscal sponsor. You have to be sponsored by a nonprofit organization in order for the Fund for the Carolinas to be able to dispense funds. The applicant must be located in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and the project takes place wholly or primarily in Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. The project ends by June 30th, 2024. An organization that receives annual operating funds from the Infusion Fund is only eligible for an Opportunity Fund grant if the project is done in collaboration with local artists or creative nonprofits or groups. No infrastructure or capital projects are eligible, and the maximum request of $30,000 is what each the max that each grant could be granted. Mind you, if you request 30, you're not guaranteed the 30, and we'll go over more of what the grant panel criteria and what they consider when awarding funding later in the presentation. I think, Priya, I'm going to hand it back to you. Oh, no, one more slide. I'm sorry. Just wanted to give you a visual of what the process is. So on February 13th, we opened up the application process for letters of intent, and we're accepting them through Friday, March 31st. So you still have about 4 weeks to submit your letter of intent. I will review your letter and make sure it meets the eligibility requirements we just covered. And if you meet those eligibility requirements, generally within 7 calendar days, you'll receive an email from me, emily.kunze@charlottenc.gov, that will be inviting you to submit a proposal, or I'll make contact with you and explain to you why your project wasn't eligible and see if we can work with you to figure out how we can let you participate in the application process. If you are eligible, full proposals are accepted through Friday, May 5th. That does not mean you have to wait till Friday, May 5th to submit your proposal. We highly encourage you to submit it sooner than that, because, we had last year, we had, dozens and dozens of presentations. We have to put them together in packets and distribute them to panels. And we want to give the panel ample time to give proper consideration to each proposal. So if you can submit them earlier, that'll be helpful to us. After the proposals come through, a grant review panel will review and score the proposal. The panels are going to be made up of local artists as well as past Opportunity Fund grant awardees. And after they will make recommendations to the advisory board's small working group, and the working group will take those recommendations and fine tune them, and finally bring a final recommendation to the Arts and Culture Advisory Board to their June advisory board meeting, where the board will vote to either grant or deny the recommendations. And once that is done, anybody that is awarded a grant will be notified by that week, third week in June, and money will be dispensed in July by the Fund for the Carolina.
Thanks, Emily. Letter of intent. So this is something that if you've had a chance to go in to see, you have already seen the kinds of things that we are asking for. But essentially, it's like a short version of what your full proposal would be. And you'll be asked questions to help us ensure that you and your project meet the eligibility requirements, like being located in Charlotte-Mecklenburg and the project being wholly or mostly in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Just understanding what artistic discipline or disciplines that your project relates to. You can see what just here, we're just wanting to know more about the types of projects, how things align with the guiding principles that I mentioned earlier, a brief description of the project. And I think really here you just want to give as clear a snippet as you can of what is the project, what is it you're seeking to do, and really the project of what you're requesting Opportunity Fund support for, because I know sometimes there's sort of a larger project and it might not be clear really specifically what the smaller project is about, like the piece that you're asking for funding for. So do try to make that clear. And then definitely don't forget to click submit. So just noting that when you get to the last page, after submitting your answer or answering the last question, there is a submit button that you need to make sure that you hit. Just FYI, unfortunately, the online platform that the city has, we don't have a way for it to generate automatic confirmations. We really wish it did. But it does, once you hit submit, it does send it to us. And then as Emily said, we actually do, especially, Emily reviews things right after they come in. And so within a very short time frame, usually within a week or so, we've had a chance to look at whether it's eligible, and you should hear from us either way. Next slide. I think, we may have, could we go back one, Emily? Yeah, thank you. Yep, to full proposals. So if your project meets the eligibility and the purpose of the Infusion Fund, and you're requested to go to the next step and submit a full proposal, these are the things that you'll be asked. So you just wanted everyone to be aware of what happens in the next stage, right? So you see here that we're asking more information about you and the team. What is who is the team that is proposed to do this project, and it's a chance to really just tell us more about why you as yourself or your team are the right team to do this project successfully. And then really being specific about what you're seeking funding for, what are the specific activities that you plan to use the funding for, and just try to also convey, what makes this project special or unique, and relevant. And then understanding why you want to do this project is really helpful too. You know, what is it that you're trying to address? What is your inspiration or motivation for doing the project? And what are the things you're trying to achieve with it? You know, how will you know that you're being successful with what you achieve? It's not what we think will make success, but we want to understand what you see as success for your project. And how would you measure that or just gauge that you are being successful at your project? And that could be, there could be quantitative ways, like you want to reach this many people, so you would know if you had that many people, you know, participating, and you will count those people. Or it might be qualitative, you know, you want people to have a certain kind of experience or learn something. And maybe the way that you would know that that's happening is you would have a survey and they would let you know through the survey, or you'll have conversations with them and they'll tell you whether they learned something or how they felt about that experience. So, and it can be a combination of quantitative and qualitative things. So we just want to hear from you what those things are. And then who are your partners, or do you have any other supporters already involved or that you're planning to reach out to involve, especially if you do have partners. And this is really, really important for any collaboration projects, is we will be asking you to provide a brief letter of support. And again, it can be really brief, but it does need to be, you know, like a letter on letterhead that says, yes, you know, I, Priya Sarkar, am partnering with Emily Kunze to do this project. And so I would just briefly say that the way I think about how to make for a strong full proposal is to answer the questions of, you know, what is it? Who's doing it? Why do you want to do it? How are you going to do it? And why now? Why, especially because the Opportunity Fund is about timely responses to timely projects. What is it? Why is this project relevant now? And why do you want to do it now? So those are the kinds of questions that I always encourage people to keep in mind as you're doing the full proposal or even the letter of intent. Next slide. So just some quick tips, you know, as well in terms of submitting the proposals. Giving yourself adequate time is really, really important, just so that you're not rushed and you're able to make it the strongest that it can be. And please, please, please read the guidelines thoroughly and follow the instructions. Oftentimes that doesn't happen completely, and unfortunately that does hamper the success of the proposal. And of course, if you have questions, you're not really sure what we mean by something in the application, whether that's a letter of intent or the full proposal, you can reach out to us. And then definitely please provide all the documents that we're requesting, because we do need to have things complete before they go to the grant review panels. Again, just kind of reiterating some of the tips, like being really clear, clearly describing your vision and what you're trying to accomplish. And a great way to kind of practice that, or, you know, just kind of see if what you've written resonates, is maybe just get a friend or get someone who maybe isn't familiar with your project yet, to read it and see if they can describe back to you what your project is and what your goals are. And if that works, then you've probably got a strong description in your proposal or your letter of intent. Also, we have a great new tool that goes even beyond just the guiding principles, which is the State of Culture Report, which was just released this Monday, which is a key milestone in the arts and culture planning process. And so really encourage you to take a look at that, especially when it comes to how your project might align with things that we're hearing in community, or that we found through the research and analysis for the comprehensive arts and culture plan. That could allow you to find some interesting connections to make in your proposal. And then just try your best to, you know, be clear and concise with your answers. We do have a word limit, just because, again, We do anticipate that there will be a lot of proposals that we will be reading and the grant panels will be reviewing. So just asking, to keep that in mind as you're crafting your proposal. Another tip I would say is to draft it in maybe Word or a Google Doc or something like that, and work on it all there till you're completely ready to go into the form. Because unfortunately, with this platform, there's not a way to save it and come back to it. So best to just draft it somewhere else. And then when you're good to go, you can simply copy and paste into the form. Next slide. And we will talk about budget in a bit, but really want to encourage you, this goes back to something Emily was saying earlier, so we do have a maximum amount that can be requested of $30,000. However, you don't have to request $30,000 just because that is the max. We would really encourage you to just be thoughtful about how much you really need to do the project, and you might not be requesting the full amount of your project from the Opportunity Fund. Maybe you plan to sell tickets and get some money that way, or maybe you're raising funds another way. Maybe you already have some support. So we really encourage you to think about ways that you can have both earned revenue as part of the mix of your budget, as well as contributed revenue, and that would a portion of that would be the Opportunity Fund grant. But do think about the different ways that you can fund your project, and ask for the amount that you really need. And I will say that, we had a whole range of grant amounts that were requested in our cycles last fall, and we had some really, really small amounts. And that's fine. If you just need a very small amount to do your project and you're looking for that from the Opportunity Fund, that's great. And actually most of the awards last fall through those 3 cycles were just under $20,000. And there were several that were ranged anywhere from, I think, maybe $1,500 to $2,000 up through maybe $15,000. So we definitely had quite a range, and we had some over that too. But the panels will really also be looking at, does the amount of the request and the way that the budget shakes out in terms of what you plan to spend things on, does that seem reasonable? Does it really fit well in a logical way with the way you've described your project in the narrative part of the proposal? And again, the deadline for that would be May 5th, but just like our March 31st deadline for the letters of intent, you do not have to wait till then, and we encourage you not to wait till then. In fact, with the letter of intent as well, the sooner you submit it and hear back whether you're eligible, if you are eligible, then the longer you have to prepare your full proposal. Similarly, if you were to submit your full proposal in advance of May 5th, the good part about that is if things are, well, you're not rushed in case something doesn't go right on the 5th with the online platform, but also if you submit it ahead of time and we're looking at it and we notice maybe just something is unclear or it's missing something, then we have time to let you know that. But once, kind of 5 p.m. on May 5th comes, even if we're still accepting applications till 11:59 p.m., when we're not necessarily online anymore, we've left the office, we wouldn't be able to really look at what you're submitting and help you with that. So really encourage you to get things in a bit sooner if you can. And then you see here Emily's email address, which probably all of you have since you're here, but here it is again. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out to Emily. And Emily and I sit a few feet from each other, so we are often looking at questions together and answering them together. Next slide. So we'll quickly go through the budget before we get to Q&A. Just briefly, we'll go through these, and I think Emily is going to pull up the budget template so we can look at it together. So again, for the LOI, you're not going to submit a budget. You're just going to tell us how much you're seeking. But when the full proposal comes around, there will be a budget template that we're asking you to complete. And so really do use the Excel sheet that we provide, please. It has formulas in it, and it's formatted in the way that it's going to make it so that the grant panel can really compare, or not compare, but just really look at everyone's budget and get an easy understanding of it without looking at lots of different formats. So please be as transparent as possible and clear about how you plan to use the money. There's a place where you can put notes about different line items, like this is going to be, and we'll look at it in a minute, but where you can explain this is going to go to pay this many artists. And this is how much they'll be paid. And this is for how many hours of work or how many days. Or this is going to go to pay for this, much food for this many people. So please do tell us that. In fact, I think it's disappeared on this, but we'll add a notes column. And thanks, Emily, for pulling up the budget. And I guess if you're able to scroll down a little bit, you kind of have an example here.
Priya, I
yeah.
just want to point out that when people get the spreadsheet, you'll see this yellow line on top that says protected view. You are going to have to click enable editing to begin entering your data right up here.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying
Sure.
that. Yeah, great. So you'll do that. Before we send this to you, we're going to add a notes section, which I think just as we were updating our form, it fell away. But it'll just be kind of column I or J next to these totals. And so you see here that the top section of this form is where you would put revenue, projected revenue, that's money in. And then the bottom half that we'll get to in a moment is money out, meaning your expenses, your costs. So the first section is contributed revenue, so money that you're raising, not necessarily money that you're earning through ticket sales or merchandise or things like that. So the first line is opportunity fund, and that's literally where you see here on the left, you're just going to put in the number. Thank you, Emily. 35,000 is the example. But actually it'll be no more than 30, right? So 30,000 max of what you would request from the opportunity fund. So that's the amount you're requesting. It would be really great if it matched what you asked for in your LOI. I know that kind of changed for some people in the last fall when we were doing this between the LOI stage and the opportunity fund, and the full proposal stage. But in any case, that's the amount you're requesting for the grant. And then nothing else goes on that column, which is why it's blacked out. And then on the next column, non-opportunity fund, that's where you're going to put in other things that either you already have in hand or that you're hoping to raise or planning to raise. Maybe you've already applied for another grant or something. And so you can put, if there's individual contributions, you can put those there. You see foundation grants, so you can put any other foundation grants here. In the example, there's another $5,000 foundation grant in there. You might be getting other support from whether it's federal government or just special events or other things that are going on. You can see a few examples here in red as other funding sources for this particular sample project. And then what this person has done, or this applicant, is they've put what those are, right? So that's helpful. We see that the other sources are these 4 other things that are listed here. So you can type those in. And then just briefly, in-kind contributions are things that you might be doing as, let's say, folks are putting in work that they're donating their services and time. Or maybe someone's donating, maybe they're donating food, but you'd put the value of the food, right? Maybe they're donating $5,000 of food, and you can put what that is, right? So on the left, you can say what it is, And if you want to put more detail, you would put that in the notes column that we're gonna add the label for, which would be over to the right. And you could say food for, food for 300 guests, or you could say graphic design services that are being donated, right? So those are the kinds of details you can put, and it really, really is helpful to us and to the reviewers to get a really clear picture of what you're doing and how you are getting this funded. Is non-opportunity, I see a question, is non-opportunity fund funding required? Is there a match? No. One of my favorite things about this is there's not a match requirement. Then there's also not a requirement that you have other funds. That said, it is really helpful to see if and that you have other support of some kind that's part of the mix, basically. So I will say that it's certainly been looked upon favorably by the advisory board when they see that even if a lot of the funding is being requested from the Opportunity Fund, that there are other partners either putting in kind, contributions, or that there's other contributed revenue, or as the next section has, earned income. So definitely I will share, that a lot of conversation took place last fall in terms of does this project have all the different types of revenue been considered? Sometimes there are projects where they really lend themselves to ticket sales, or maybe just selling merchandise, or maybe it's providing a fee, or fees that could be earned for a service that's being provided. So we definitely are wanting you all to just consider all the different options you have available to you, and have that reflected here. And you can also explain it in the narrative as well. You could say, well, we plan to do this, or you could say, this project doesn't really lend itself to earned revenue of such and such type, and so that's why we're seeking, Opportunity Fund grants. So you can address this topic in your narrative or also in the notes that you might add. But just want to highlight that is definitely something that the advisory board has talked a lot about and is really looking at how you are thinking about that in your proposals. So moving on to project expenses. This is also where we're really seeking to get a clear understanding of how you are going to, what's involved in your project in terms of the costs, and how, who's going to do it, how much you're going to pay them, that kind of thing. So here you can see under programs and salaries, this example has artists and designers and an amount. And actually what we would really, really like to see is, rather than just a number, which you would start with that, but either underneath, like you could put in parentheses next to where it says artists and designers, or you could put it in the column that Emily has her cursor in, where we're going to have it as your notes column. You would explain, okay, how much you're going to pay how many people for what kind of work. So you might be planning to pay 11 artists $1,000 each of stipends for such and such thing that they're going to do. And that just really helps us understand what's the breakdown of the $11,000 that you're going to pay folks. Similarly, you could have some administrative salary or wage, in the number 2 section. And again, that shouldn't be like your general operations if you're an organization, but it can be, a percentage of time that you're going to spend, or someone, on your staff or in your group is going to spend specifically on this project. So do you need to indicate, X amount of time that's about this particular project? And then you can see there's other things that you can put in a portion of things for. So where you have, like here, it's got rent for a facility. So maybe you've got a project where you've got to rent some space for X amount of time to do this project. And so that is what that amount is for. And of course, the more detail you can provide in the notes, the better. And then you can see here under other, anything else that doesn't fit in the categories we've got, that's okay. Just insert them yourself under other. And here you can see concessions, logo, advertising, things like that. You can put in here. Now, one thing I do want to note, Emily, if you don't mind scrolling up just a little bit, please, this is where you can have things in both columns, right? Because the left-hand column is what are you spending the requested opportunity fund grants on? And the right-hand column is what are you spending other money on? And that could be, money that you're raising or money that you're earning. And I see, are there budget items that are excluded from inclusion? Yes, capital expenditures are really not part of it this time, in that we basically capital or infrastructure expenses are not allowable through this cycle. And I think that would be the only thing. Emily, am I forgetting anything that we've talked about that wouldn't be allowable this time?
I would say also like alcohol cannot be claimed. And I know there's a few other things listed on in the FAQs that I just can't think of at the moment right now. But I did want to point out your opportunity fund revenue request should match the expenses. So if you're asking for $30,000 from the opportunity fund, you should spend $30,000 in the opportunity fund column.
Thanks, Emily. So I think we could definitely answer other budget questions with the last few minutes that we've got, but maybe Emily, is okay for now. If we go back to just do the last couple slides.
Sure, just bear with my technological issue.
Sure, thank you. You're better at it than I am, that's for sure. Okay, so just briefly, we've talked about fiscal sponsorship. I think Emily explained that. So our partner Foundation for the Carolinas distributes the funds. That they do that for all infusion fund grants. And because of they do have an IRS requirement that they need to disperse funds to a nonprofit, and so that's why we can provide these funds to a group that's not a nonprofit or an individual, but that's why you do need to have a nonprofit fiscal sponsor in order to receive the funds. And so we would ask for a memorandum of agreement from your fiscal sponsor. We do have on our FAQ a link to some more information about what a fiscal sponsor or an agent, what they do. Basically they receive the funds for you and then they pay it out to you. And so one thing I'll just mention is, so you will need one by the time you submit the full proposal, even if you don't have one at the time of the LOI. And the other thing is, your fiscal sponsor agent doesn't have to be in Charlotte or Mecklenburg. It's okay. We know some folks actually have an established relationship with a nonprofit that happens to be somewhere else. Fractured Atlas is actually an organization based in New York that is really well known, that does fiscal sponsorship for folks all over the country. And so, it's okay if the fiscal sponsor is not located here. And yeah, I would encourage you, if you're not really familiar with the just what fiscal sponsors and agents do, to check out the link that we have on our website. So I will, can we go to the next slide, please, Emily? Supporting materials, just briefly, we do have a limit on length. encourage you to submit things that would just really strengthen your proposal in terms of helping us understand what you're trying to do, and maybe that you have the kind of background or experience or partners, you know, that you need to do this particular project. So you can include up to 3 things, total of 5 pages. And you can include some links, and maybe that's to examples of your work, your past work that's relevant to this project, that is. Or maybe you've got a part of this project already underway and you want us to see the work in progress. And you can see here some of the other parameters and tips. And I think we have some of this information on our FAQ as well. Next slide. How they'll be awarded. I won't go through this actually because Emily, you did a great job describing this earlier on the snapshot page, but obviously you guys can revisit the process online. You can see this too is directly from our website, so I won't read it to you now, especially in the interest of time, but these things are also provided in terms of what the review panels will be looking for, what the advisory board will be looking for as they look at these applications. Emily's already talked about these items at the bottom. And then we will ask for a report. It'll be a brief report, brief narrative, and then your actual budget, meaning how did you end up spending the money and what money did you end up having coming in after all. So that would be a final report. Next slide. Won't go over this, but you'll have it for reference when we post this. But these are basically the timeframes that Emily talked through earlier. And we will have time for questions, but before that, I want to put this out. Thanks, Emily. So just because it's coming up, we really hope you'll all participate. As I mentioned in the Charlotte Arts and Culture Plan process, that State of Culture report is out. You can use this QR code to go directly to the page where you can download it. You can also, there's a link to take a brief survey for feedback. And also we'll be having an online public event by Zoom next Wednesday night, 6 to 8 p.m. You can also register for that event via this QR code. It'll take you to the page. We really hope you'll read the report and share your thoughts with us. And your feedback is going to be really crucial because actually the steering group will be using your feedback as we move into the next phase of work, which is developing the plan. So that's the little plug for next week's event and for the report. And then we'll do a few minutes of Q&A. I'm just quickly going to start with the ones that are in the chat. So one is, I have 2 projects I'm considering combining into one. Should I apply for them separately? And can we apply for 2 separate things as one institution? So 1 application per applicant. And if you want to combine into one, I think that's up to you. It's just about whether it will meet all the guidelines and whether it will be understandable to us as the Infusion Fund as to what the project is. But 1 application per applicant, please. Oh, I do want to mention one thing. Thank you for the question. And also, we know a lot of folks work with each other, a lot of collaboration. If you're a fiscal sponsor, you can be a fiscal sponsor for someone and also apply for your own project. That's okay. So meaning if you're a fiscal sponsor on someone else's project, that won't preclude you from, as an organization, having your own application. Okay, are these restricted funds or non-restricted? Restricted to this project, specifically to the way that your budget says that you will spend the funds. Thank you for the question. Will the funds be permitted for paying artists for their time and contribution? Yes, absolutely. We believe in paying artists for their time and contribution. So please put that into your budget. And as I mentioned with the example, tell us how many people you're paying, what you're paying them for, and how much you're paying each of them. And if you don't know who they are, that's fine, but just say, we plan to pay this many artists for this kind of thing. This is what we're paying them. Let's see. Does the collaboration have to be from Charlotte? It doesn't have to be from Charlotte. I think that the advisory board is really looking eagerly toward collaborations amongst the Charlotte Mecklenburg arts and culture community. And if you've had a chance to look at the State of Culture report, you'll see that that is one of the key insights, that more of that is needed. So it doesn't have to be from the area, but if you've got collaborators who are local, I think that will definitely be looked upon favorably. Proof of submission to IRS for 501c3 status be sufficient for eligibility? No, you would need to have the status or work with a fiscal sponsor. Does that make sense? So either the actual letter or working with a fiscal sponsor, and we will ask you to provide their letter to prove that they're a 501c3. Thanks for the question. What else do I see?
There is no word limit on the LOI project description portion. The 500, we did not put a limitation in that from Caitlin Johnson.
Thanks, Emily. That said, brevity is appreciated. So, sorry, someone is mowing the lawn outside of this window. How many proposals were submitted versus funded? Oh, that's a great question. And actually, Emily, you please correct me if I get these numbers. Or wait, do you have the numbers?
Yeah, I pulled it
Go
up.
for
So we had 81 people submit letters of intent. 76 were invited to submit proposals. 51 people did submit proposals, and out of that, 31 grant awards were funded.
Thank you, Emily. Emily on the spot. Way to be on. And just FYI, because I kind of recall these numbers from before, that's a 60% approval rate. I don't know about you guys, but I've been doing this for 20 years. That's a really high approval rate. So I really encourage you to apply. Like I'm ecstatic because most open calls don't have that high an approval rate. So again, really encourage you guys to apply, please. I mean, if your project is eligible, but so okay. Any other, Emily? I don't know if I've missed any questions that were in the chat, and if not, we can definitely open it up. And I know folks got to go, and I'm sorry we're a little over time, but I think I don't know, Emily, if you're able to stay on for like 5 minutes. If we've got a few more questions, I can stay on for about 5 more minutes.
Question from Lauren Wallace. If a project is taking place across multiple organizations and involves multiple artists, can organizations apply for their specific portions of a larger initiative, or can there be only one application?
I think that it would make most sense for there to be one application for a particular project. But this sounds like something that might be better discussed. So I would invite you to reach out to us so we could like have a conversation to understand more. But my first blush is it probably makes the most sense for there to be one application that just includes the different pieces of it. Thanks, folks. If you need to go, thanks for joining. Okay. And then if that's all the questions in the chat for now, maybe we can go to folks. And do we have a raise hand function? I think we probably do, right? Maybe we can use the raise hand function, but I also see even before that, I think we have Paula, I think you raised your hand for the question, right? So maybe we can start with Paula, and then Emily, I'm going to defer to you to call on folks if you don't mind, if you're able to see hands that are raised. So I right now I see Paula first, and maybe I see Ann Lambert second, if we can go in that order. Go for it, Paula. Oh, Paula, I think you're muted.
There's also a hand from Rich from earlier too, Priya.
Okay.
Is that, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was reviewing the copy list where we were to receive the link for today, and I did not see Alternative Avenue's name on there unless there is a misspelling.
I'm not sure what list you're speaking of, Paula.
It was an announcement I received from Emily, actually. She
Inviting
sent me
you.
the link today, the invitation and the link today. And I was trying to check for alternative avenues on that list. And I saw something that looked like alternative avenues, but
I got a
it was
call this
incorrect.
morning from, I think it was Michelle, I think. I can't remember her name, but she gave me an email address, ALL Alternatives at Gmail, and I read it back to her, and so,
Yeah, that's me. That's a different organization. We're a different, totally
oh,
different
okay, I'm sorry
organization.
about
Right.
Yeah,
that.
that's me. That's okay.
Oh,
So I can send that to you, Emily, the
okay,
correct one for alternative avenues.
okay, do that.
Because
Go ahead and
I
put it
received
in
an
the chat.
initial announcement from Priora, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was waiting to get that invitation and the link, but I did not receive it.
But you're on here now, so that was the
Right.
link.
So I want to make sure that going forward, alternative avenues is on that list.
I gotcha. Sure. Yep. We'll keep everybody's email that is here today and make sure that we communicate with you. So absolutely. We
So
gotcha.
you have my correct alternative avenues email today.
Yes. Yes, I have
Okay,
that
very good.
now. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
So for
Thanks,
clarity,
Paula.
I
So I
am a
think,
different organization, correct? Y'all got that?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I do.
thank you.
Thank you.
It's similar.
all right, I think we're going to Anne next and then to Rich.
Hi, my question was actually in the chat, but it's a little bit long. Basically, one of the highlights of the State of Culture report was the need for affordable, accessible space for artists. And our applicant organization, which would be the VAPA Center, we meet this need by providing space to artists at a low cost. So the question I have is, can our letter of intent or inquiry describe us as our project as continuing to meet this need and getting the resources together or applying for portions of the staff or the infrastructure that meets the need for space? Or is it better for us and more competitive for us to describe a subset of that mission, like, again, just thinking off the top of my head, a software package to manage the tenants, or hiring a new employee specifically to try to rent the space as an event space, that kind of thing? What's
Thanks,
better?
Anne. Yeah, so actually all of the things you just described sound like operations to me. Because this has to be for a specific delineated project. And so I would encourage you to note that alignment with that particular insight from the plan. I think that's a good connection point to draw out in your letter of intent. It's just that this grant is really needs to be for a specific project that is not kind of part of operational things that are kind of ongoing. So for example, I think like in terms of providing space for artists, that's sort of like the 24/7 mission, right, of VAPA Center. And in that sense, something that if the funds were requested to kind of provide that ongoing space, or even a staff person to do some of the work that's the ongoing work of VAPA Center, that kind of relates to the organization's overall, like how they operate. So I would, unfortunately, I don't think that would be eligible, but I would say if there's a specific piece of something that's coming up, then that is what I would encourage you to apply for if it's a project. And we can certainly talk more about if you're considering a couple different things of what to apply for, to make sure that they are eligible.
What's the best way to pursue, like, send Emily, like a request for a 15-minute conversation? By
Yeah,
phone?
yeah.
Okay, that's what we'll
That's
do. Thank you.
That's a good way. Thanks. Okay, I think Rich was next.
Hi, Emily. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. Early on, there was a person that asked about acknowledgement of some way that the letter of intent had been received. I got an immediate copy of it back the moment I submitted the button. So I don't know why that happened. Then later on, I got Emily's copy that she said she'd emailed to me. But
Oh, great. I'm glad you got an automatic thing. I think last time we had tried that, it wasn't generating. It wasn't generating those. So
I thought
I'm
you'd like to
delighted.
know.
It's like a pop-up screen. I don't know if it functions as well on like a mobile device, but it does say thank you and gives you an opportunity really briefly to download your responses. But I know across different platforms, it might not have the same functionality. But if you ever submit something and you want to double check, just reach out to me and I'll confirm that we received it.
You're a sweetheart.
She is.
Thanks for the jokes, Rich.
Oh yeah, Emily and I had a good time telling jokes to each other. So we're a 501c3, and we're submitting a letter of intent for a play, and if we make a profit, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that
Um,
would be good.
and do you are you going to notify me of when we're going to schedule a time to review my LOI?
Rich, last time I talked to you, you said that you were going to have someone review it and let me know if you had any revisions to it. And
Yeah,
then I was going to review that final version and let you know if you were invited or not. So I was just waiting for you to reply to me.
all right. I'm replying to you now. You've got it.
You're good to go. Okay, I'll thank you. I'll respond to you.
That's what I meant. All right.
We have time for
Rich.
2 more questions. I think we
Thank
have
you.
Wendy and Sarah, and then we're going to have to wrap up.
Sounds good. I think I missed who you said Sarah and was someone before
Wendy's
Sarah?
next, and then Sarah
Okay.
would be the last one.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Go for it, Wendy.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mine is a short question. It's an eligibility question. So if we received infusion fund grant that was an unrestricted grant on last year, are we eligible to apply for this grant?
Yes.
Okay. That's it.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Thanks for the question. Okay, Sarah?
Yes, I just wanted to know about, under the eligibility items, it said something about technical support. What types of technical support does that include? Like, does that include hardware or software, or what kinds of elements are we looking at there? If I can give an example, if that helps, but.
Yeah. Do you want to give an example of something you're considering?
Just recently, our organization had an opportunity to purchase a lens on a projector to really amplify a performance. And so if we came up with another idea that would support something like that we do need for a specific project, but of course it would be an asset that our organization would maintain, does that qualify? Because I mean, technical things are typically, if it's a hardware issue and it's an item, a tangible thing, then that's something we're going to maintain. But it does support that one project, but then it's ours then. Does that make, I don't know if I'm making sense or not.
I think you are making sense. So I'm going to kind of parse it a little differently in my answer.
Great.
So few things. One is technical support. I think we would think of that differently. So the example you gave, I would think of it more like equipment, and you would
Right.
put that down as a different line item, equipment.
Sure.
So just to clarify, I think the kinds of things that like I would view as technical support is maybe more like maybe you need someone's services to help you to develop a particular grant. Like you need to, you know, or you need training, you need technical training on fill in the blank, and you're looking for support for that.
Okay.
And so then equipment. So I would say yes, if it's like X piece of equipment that you need for a project, you could keep the equipment obviously, and then you're not gonna like get rid of it after that. So you could put that in. I will say that we have had it's I think something that to be aware of is it might depend on what the equipment is. So I know that in the past, our advisory board has looked at a piece, there was sort of like, it could have it's sort of like a piece of equipment that was very infrastructural. Like it was a major piece of equipment to sort of transform a physical space in a way that the board felt that was more in the realm of like capital infrastructure.
Sure.
And therefore
Sure.
not something that was a fit for this grant. So again, I would say you need, you know, something like a lens to do a something that to me sounds like it's probably would be looked upon fine. And that's in the realm of just equipment for something. If it's sort of a major, this is going to transform our theater space, for example, in a big way. Not that it wouldn't be needed for that project, but that's probably more of like a big ticket transformational item that is not what this particular grant cycle's for. Does that make sense?
That's great. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. And I think that was going to be our last question, but I don't know, Emily, if you think we can do
Tanisha's
one
hand is
last,
up. I say we take Tanisha and then we wrap up.
and then we wrap up. Yep.
I don't have a particular question. I just want to thank all of you all for taking the time out to just provide us with amazing information. I'm representing Alternatives Inc. And I just want to thank y'all because y'all didn't have to. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. My philosophy is we do have to, but not because we're required to, but because it's the right thing to do. So I want to thank you all for taking us up on it because not everybody does. So thank you for taking the time. And thank you, Emily, for all that you do. And please, folks, if you do have other questions, reach back out to us. Do take a look. I'm not sure how quickly, hopefully by Monday, we'll be able to get the presentation online. We'll work with our colleagues to post it. So do take another look and just let us know if you have questions. Thanks, everybody, and hope you have a great weekend.